right. Hi again, everybody. Melissa Steck here from the Christian Reformed Church Office of Social Justice, back here for video 2 with Angelica and Peter from World Relief. And we've been talking about World Refugee Day, which is coming up on June 20th. And we've been talking about COVID-19 impacts in the United States on refugees, asylum seekers, and undocumented communities here. So we first, as I said, talked about the impacts in the first video, and now we are going to have a conversation about what we can do, how the church can respond to all the needs that were identified in our conversation in the first video. So again, I'll invite Peter and Angelica back into this conversation. So our big question here is, what can churches and individuals do to make a difference? We've got 4 ideas about that. So the first of that is to advocate. So I'll open it up to whichever one of you wants to jump in first.
I can start. One thing the church can do is, as individual members, we can advocate not just at the federal level for support, but as decisions are made at the municipal and state levels about how our resources, how our taxpayer resources are allocated, that can play a huge role in often systems that lack supports needed for immigrants to assimilate, to feel fully part of the fabrics of our societies. We in Illinois, we actually had just a great successful example of the advocacy work that the church played a role of, that many of you perhaps listening that were on the OSJ newsletter that I've been in contact with. Thank you for those of you who responded and called state senators, state representatives about the Illinois state budget, requesting more money in the immigrant service line, and that was a wildly successful campaign. The upcoming Illinois budget will have, instead of $6.5 million devoted to immigrant services, we'll have $30 million in the upcoming year. So that's a huge help. That's something we're very excited about, something we're very grateful for, and something that is an example of the very real way in which we as Christians can make a difference in our advocacy.
Yeah, I think that was an awesome move. And another layer of advocacy for church is within your own neighborhoods and local communities, especially if you are located near or in an immigrant neighborhood. We ask that you can just look at and try to establish connections with your school systems, with your elderman's office, and really try to bring the relief and the connection to the people that must need it. And a story on how can you do this is in the northwest side of Chicago, at the Church Emperor of the Brook, we have been connecting with our elderman's office and with the school district to know who are the families that are in most dire need of food resources. And for the last couple of months, we've been offering basically to do deliveries for these families, no strings attached. We only need an address and a day, and we'll do it. So it's been a great response. We have had school social workers being like, thank you, like I didn't know what to do with this, with these families in need, and teachers. So just kind of mobilize your local neighborhood, and what a beautiful way to also just display the love of Christ with people across the street from you. We really sometimes missed who in our community could be in need, and who in the other block from where we live could be having a really tough time with this virus and all the consequences. So just look at your neighborhood. If you don't know if that's the case of your church, look around you. There's always a community that would probably benefit from us acting out on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that example, Angelica. Because those are things that can be practiced and applied in different contexts across the US. And thanks to Peter for mentioning the action alert, the emails that our office created for folks to be able to connect with their elected officials all the way from the federal level down to state and local level. And I just want to make another push on that, encourage you to use what's called our Hear Us Out action alert. That gives you an opportunity to connect with those elected officials about protections and advocacy for immigrant and refugee communities and those that work in the food industry. And for asylum seekers, so there's some drop-down options for you to choose to advocate for immigrant communities in particular during this time. And again, that link will be in, the links will be below in the video descriptions of the resources that we talk about. So anything else on advocacy before we jump into the next one? Okay. All right, so another way that churches can make a difference is to volunteer and welcome. So if the two of you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of opportunities for the church to be in relationship with refugees and immigrants. If there's not a World Relief location near you, there are also all kinds of, throughout our country, throughout our communities, great agencies, refugee resettlement agencies, other community assistance organizations that are doing great work seeking to serve refugees and immigrants. Most would love to find wonderful volunteers looking to help them as they seek to do their work. World Relief, for example, we're, even in this strange time we're in of social isolation and COVID-19, we're still looking for volunteers to help provide community for the people we're serving, to help provide mentoring and tutoring options, to help provide support through grocery delivery, for example. There certainly remain opportunities and needs to be met in terms of how we can welcome those around us and how we can help them in their journeys towards beginning their new lives in America.
Yeah, if I could add to that comment, just plug here, we are looking now, because of all of our volunteer opportunities are going online, you can actually volunteer with World Relief Chicago if you live in a different city and there's no other option or alternative in the city or neighborhood where you're at. You can still tutor refugees and asylum seekers with the summer program, with the ESL program. So yeah, stay tuned because there is that opportunity still available. And I will add, as churches, there's a lot of our people that have a little bit more time available in their hands, being home. So I would say, if that's where you find yourself, just discuss options with your pastors and staff and leaders and say, hey, I'll do it. I'll coordinate the efforts, not just say, let's do this volunteering great thing and put it on your staff or on your pastors to execute it. Just say, I'm here, use me too. And a great example of this, we saw it with a church that we work with closely in World Relief, New Life Church. They have multiple locations in the city, and they decided that because the need for food is so big amongst immigrants, that they will become a food pantry. And they work the connection. So long story short, now all New Life churches are also food pantries, and many of them work closely with World Relief to secure the food that we use to donate to the families. And all the people that work in the food pantry are church volunteers. So in this way, it was just kind of like a grassroots desire that yes, was helped by the leaders of the church, but at the same time, the work that goes in it is executed daily by volunteers that are there every week, make sure the food comes in, make sure to stay in touch with both the organizations that they partner with, including World Relief, to distribute the food, but also with the families directly that they're distributing. And this was, again, kind of food was the main point, because food is what they assessed it was a need in the community. Maybe it's different where you live, and that's where there's a lot of room for creativity.
I think that's a great point, Angelica, in terms of creativity and opportunities. There really are so many. New Life, also their Little Village location, before everything shut down, they had allowed us to have a caseworker utilize their space in Little Village, which is on the southwest side of the city. Our office is up on the north side. That just provides a level of accessibility and access to services for immigrants more on that side of the city. That's a great way. And our suburban offices, our World Relief suburban offices, partner with multiple churches to provide different venues for English classes that are, again, to make it more meeting immigrants where they're at, as opposed to making them come to one central location. There's, yeah, all kinds of opportunities to for the church to show the world what the church is supposed to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those ideas. And yes, obviously you were mentioning things specific to the greater Chicago area, but of course there are opportunities for everybody in your local context to see what organizations and even grassroots efforts have come together to allow you to volunteer and serve at these times for these particularly vulnerable populations and neighbors among us. So yeah, thank you for that. So another idea for making a difference at this time at the individual level and from churches as well is to donate, to offer your financial gifts to different organizations at this time. So a few that I had in mind that I thought of to sort of touch on the different groups that we've talked about, in addition to obviously our partners with World Relief. Another partner organization that the OSJ and the Christian Reformed Church is connected with is Bethany Christian Services. They continue to do this work and serve refugee communities, so that is definitely a place to donate. Our ministry partners in the Christian Reformed Church, World Renew, that also supports and serves refugees. That's also one I would encourage. In terms of asylum seekers, as some of you may know who have followed our immigration work more closely, you are perhaps familiar with the fact that I had the opportunity to go to the US southern border in El Paso and Ciudad Juarez last year, and I got connected with a ministry there on the Mexican side of the border with a church called Frontera de Gracia. And they are serving asylum seekers. So I would also encourage giving to them at this time. They've been really active in trying to distribute food to those in their community for vulnerable asylum seekers at this time who unfortunately are not on the receiving end of some of the Mexican federal government's food benefits for folks at this time. So that's another one I would recommend. And just, and in thinking about the local level in our undocumented communities, which we talked about in the other video, one that is specific to my context, which is here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, is a crowdsource fund with some organizations that have partnered together. It's called La Lucha Fund, and that is specifically to support undocumented and mixed status families in the area who don't benefit from some of the COVID protections that were talked about in our previous video. So again, some links that'll be available below for you to look into. So other ideas, Angelica and Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a cause near and dear to both Angelica and I's heart is you can certainly donate to World Relief. We'd be more than happy to accept that. We are trying to meet. We mentioned, both of us, we detailed in the previous video, the immense economic need right now amongst the immigrant community, refugee, asylum seeker, undocumented. We certainly see that in our daily work, just the tremendous amount of need. Yeah, tremendous amount of need, and World Relief is doing its best to meet that need to the extent of its ability. We've set up emergency rental assistance funds, both in our Chicagoland and suburban offices, to try and help those who don't have other options for meeting their rent. And that requires funds, though. That requires money. You can donate, and you can designate that you desire that money to go to that. And right, like us, as with any other organization, we also need people, employees, to administer those programs, and so general donations also help to support that work. And I guess, Angelica, if you'll allow me just to take a moment to brag about my own church as well. I think our church context is probably similar to Minnie's. Everyone is a little different, but probably similar to Minnie's, in that my church is one where socioeconomic level is middle to above average, and full of people with funds available that want to help the less fortunate in these financially troubling times, but in our collective social circles don't necessarily have the connections with those who are struggling. And our church has connected with World Relief to provide those connections, to put our church into contact with families that could really use that financial assistance right now. And my guess is for many of the people watching, their church context is similar. There is, when we're doing advocacy talks, I feel like often talk about how we want, donating is great, but it's also important to engage in other ways, such as advocacy and developing relationship. I think this is almost a unique time in which the church is situated, where our resources, and frankly where our comfort zone usually is, probably actually meets this need pretty well. What is really needed right now is we can't actually meet with people that well, but your money's really needed. And whether that's to us or to other organizations doing great work helping those in unfortunate situations, again, a great opportunity for the church to demonstrate in action what the church is supposed to be.
Yeah, just as a way of praise report on that, I've have families that have been recipients of some of that fund, and you cannot imagine the joy that it is to be able to tell families a church provided your rent, and then hearing them back say, wow, God is really helping me. God has not forgetting us and our needs. And even having that little bit of wiggle room to be able to then engage in conversations about God. So at least at World Relief, not all organizations that you can donate to where might have this gospel approach, we do, and I'm pretty sure many of the ones that Melissa recommended do as well. So it's just a great joy, at least for me as a caseworker, to be able to say to people, this food comes from the church, or these rent money comes from the church standing on your side, and seeing the response and being able to engage in that. And maybe in your community there might not be any funds, and I think this is a great time for you, for many of us believers to say, all right, let's start it, let's do it. It doesn't require that much to create a relief fund, just the actual will, the desire, the connection. And I think for us in World Relief, we've seen how the generosity of people have really helped us continue to stand with the families. And it's interesting how God uses people when our funds are going to zero and we say, well, we can't take no more applications because we ran out of money. Somehow, through the generosity of people and the work of our directors like Peter, always end up getting some more money put in our funds, and we can continue to serve the families. And I hope that's the case as we continue to move into the different phases of this crisis, that families who are in need, that we won't have to tell them no, but that we can continue to say, yes, here is the support, and here the church has provided for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving such meaningful and tangible examples for folks to really be the hands and feet of Jesus, even in spite of social distance, right? There are still so many ways to serve. So one of the final things here about what churches and individuals can be doing to make a difference is prayer. That spiritual discipline that we need to be faithful to, especially at this time. So what specifically can churches be praying for?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things, particularly in this time, but really always as I engage in my work, my job, is that the church is faithful in remembering its vocational call to welcome what the Old Testament terms the stranger. The church has, faithfully being the church requires vocational responsibilities in so many areas. Welcoming the stranger is absolutely one of them, and that the church will be willing to do the hard work, often the uncomfortable work, in terms of stepping outside your comfort zone to interact with and meet with people who look differently than us, have a different perspective than us. I think Angelica, I know, will agree that we as the church will do this. We find that it has a tremendous ripple effect for the life of the church. It is a life-giving experience for the immigrants we're coming into contact with and serving, but also tremendously for us as church members, as the church corporately, benefiting from that experience, that shared perspective that they bring, and just the positive effect, faithfully witnessing in that way that has on the church community. It is life-giving, and it helps us better reflect Christ.
Yeah, as we look into things to pray for, I would say also just pray for gospel opportunities to rise up. I know many of us are praying for peace, praying for protection, praying for things that we should definitely be praying for. But I think it's a great time for us as a church to say, God, allow us to share the faith, not just to serve with our hands, but also share with our words the gospel and the hope that we have in the gospel, and the healing and all the beautiful things that we have in the gospel. Recently, I was just sharing with one of our clients who also is, she is also a believer, was going through a difficult time, and she was just allowed me to share the gospel again, and just hearing, how the response to the beautiful truth that Christ came to this world, died for us, and then resurrected and gave us life. That truth, when we're able to share that with others, especially in times like this, in times of so much insecurity, of so much fear, where people is looking for hope, we have that answer. We know how hope looks like. We know who is hope and who is truth, and that's the person of Jesus Christ. So just having the opportunity to share that with others, I think is a prayer that we all should ask for God, and He is really faithful. And when we ask that question, He will provide those opportunities for us to share faith and encourage maybe those who are our brothers and sisters in the faith and come from immigrant backgrounds, but also those who are in many ways looking for hope.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much. And that is such a beautiful reminder that the Holy Spirit does and will move regardless of the fact that I am stuck in this apartment and that we haven't been able to engage with each other under regular circumstances, we hope and we pray that the Spirit will move hearts and minds in this moment, and yeah, through our words, like you said, Angelica, and through our acts of service as well. So thank you for sharing those prayer requests. And I hope for everybody that has tuned in that this has been a helpful conversation for you, just learning a bit more about how immigrant communities have been impacted at this time of COVID-19 and social distancing, and how the church has the church has been able to respond, and how we hope the church will continue to respond at this time. So thank you so much to our guests, Peter and Angelica from World Relief. Thank you on behalf of the Christian Reformed Church Office of Social Justice, and we look forward to connecting again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.